Hey there riders, MotoJourno Chris here, and I apologise if there's a heap of background noise. This was the best I could do today. This is about the 5th attempt I have made, and I'm here having a look at Kawasaki Z400. It's a cool little naked Street Fighter styled machine, as you can see here. It's got really nicely integrated overall styling, and I reckon it's just a cool little machine. I know there are going to be some people who complain and go, oh, it's Transformer-like, oh, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, I'd be more upset that it's not going to turn into a Transformer than that it looks like one. Obviously, it'd be a heap more expensive if this thing turned into a walking, talking robot. As it stands, it's a really cool machine. It's got the nice, relaxed ergonomics that are ideal for a learner rider. It's got a really nice finish quality, which is really important, particularly at the price point, because in some cases you see people going, or manufacturers I should say, going a little bit cheaper on some aspects of the bikes because they know they've competitively priced them, and so it's less of a concern. Whereas on this, I don't think that's really been done at all. It's got a very nice finish quality overall. It's got nice paint on it. The mirrors, there's some vibes through them, and there's a bit more vibes through the bars compared to the Ninja 400 bar setup, which is a little bit different than this. However, it is what it is. This thing's meant to be a street fighter, whereas the Ninja 400's a sports bike, and there are some significant differences between the bikes as a result. This one's got a different dash. Obviously, it's got the indicators here on the front. It's got a single headlight unit with 2 headlights in it, which is a really cool unit. Really good throw of light. I'm really actually quite impressed with that. And overall, it's just an awesome, fun thing to ride. So I'm going to jump on board and give you my thoughts while I'm riding of just how this bike stacks up. Alright, so Kawasaki's Z400 on the road. It performs similarly to Kawasaki's Ninja 400. There's a great parallel twin, 399cc's as everyone knows by now, and it has a massively meaty low to mid-range torque for this kind of bike. For this capacity, it really does have outstanding torque. And while the top end doesn't have the same rush as the R3, the bike is still pulling hard and offers an ultra controllable top end. So as far as performance goes, there's very, very little to complain about, and it's also hitting as hard as a lot of the 600 bikes. It may not have quite the same level of torque as those machines, but it's certainly right up there in power. Now the engine is a little rough on a closing throttle from some RPM, with that transition onto engine braking being quite harsh, and it seems to be the point where the fueling cuts off and you transitioned onto the engine braking, or you're on a closing throttle, and the way to get around this is you just ride more aggressively, and it'll actually bypass this whole feeling by going straight onto the slipper clutch on the big downshifts. And just generally riding a little bit more aggressively also actually just makes the Z400 feel like a smoother machine. Now that extra torque can also require a little bit more finesse on the throttle from low speeds and at a standstill, and that's the same as on the Ninja 400, but the clutch is super light and there's no issues using that at all. Even if you might have to overuse it a little bit in traffic, no dramas. Brakes are a big standout for this offering, if you ask me. There's great power on the front end despite only having a single disc brake and caliper. There's really good control at the lever, and while the suspension seems a bit softer and more road orientated on the Z400, it does have the effect of being a smoother general ride, which is a good thing for most of the time. The only downside to that is that it's a bit harsher over the rough stuff at speed in comparison to the Ninja. Now the Z400 feels very small and thin between the legs too. It's a very light bike overall. However, it's not it's not overly light in the steering department. One of the things I massively notice whenever I jump on, say, an RC390 or a BMW 310 is they are super sharp, and it almost takes you by surprise. I reckon the Z400's a little bit more balanced, and while obviously that's just something that comes down to what the rider prefers, to me it feels like a more neutral machine overall, which makes it very, very predictable and very easy to ride. The handlebars are pretty flat and there's a very upright seating position, and it's a comfortable ride triangle for me at 180 centimeters and on the longer leg side. The seat is hard and that's a definite area of improvement for Kawasaki, but it'll also be a challenge because the seat is really narrow in the area where it's a bit uncomfortable. And not only that, it's very sculpted to give the easiest reach to the ground. So I have to say, even though that's probably my biggest criticism on this bike, it's going to be a really difficult one for Kawasaki to fix at the same time. Obviously, buying an aftermarket seat or buying their ergonomic seat or comfort seat, you lose a little bit of that really low seat height, but you get more comfort, which if you're doing a lot more kilometers on the bike is an obvious choice. Now, handling is nimble, but like I said, there's no super aggressive turn in or falling onto the side of the tire. Now, on sports bikes, this is more common. However, for me, on a naked bike in particular, especially an everyday bike that's going to be ridden in the wet, it's got a nice linear response and it goes right out onto the side of the tire, very controllably, very linear, which means that you're not feeling like anything's out of your control, especially as a new rider, because as much as the more aggressive tire profiles are great on the sports bikes and when you're out in the twisties or at the track, for me, when you're riding in the wet and the dry, a linear tire with a rounder profile is generally the way to go, and especially for a learning rider, you don't want to be falling onto the side of the tire really quickly once you get to a certain point. And that's what I really love about the Z400. It's really nice to ride. It does everything very well, but without kind of any of those, in the handling department at least, without any of those quirks which can make a bike a little bit more of a handful. Now, those standard fitment tires are the Dunlop GPR 300s. They're good in the wet and the dry. It's a good all-round tire, I have to say. I've ridden both of these bikes in pretty much all conditions, and I've got to say I'd be very happy refitting a set of those tires onto this bike because they're that good. Now, ground clearance is great, as you'd expect, and the Z400 really lives up to the naked bike and Street Fighter tags for that small, nimble and torquey package. It really does. I know obviously for new riders they've probably got less of an idea of what that stands for, but a Street Fighter is a stripped back, normally a race style machine, and it's then, it's a naked bike, and still with the aggressive ergonomics and with a really nice kind of high performance engine in it as well. And the Z400 certainly ticks those boxes for a factory option. Obviously a Street Fighter is normally a proper custom bike that someone's done themselves in their shed. Now, for those who don't want to move up to a 600cc beginner bike, the Z400 really offers a great alternative in the naked bike range. It's got a significantly lower price, similar power, great torque, if not quite right up there with those 600s, and the overall styling package to me is definitely one of both a more expensive bike and a machine that I reckon looks horn. Anyway, so that's it from me today for the Z400. Let me know what you think about this particular bike. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to sub and leave those comments, and I'll be back soon.